Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's lesson on stress management. So in the past couple of weeks we've looked at both arousal and anxiety and looked at how those affect performance. Stress management can help if an athlete's becoming too anxious in sport, and stress is something that athletes have to deal with, and sometimes it can be quite serious. So there's a few examples here. The first one, the lady, is a French athlete who was competing in the Sydney Olympics in 2000, had a lot of expectations on her shoulders, expected to win gold, but after one of the qualifying rounds she decided she couldn't actually continue and actually quit and went home. On our far right is Jonathan Trott, who's an English cricketer, and when he was playing for England in Australia, he'd got too stressed and felt he couldn't carry on anymore and actually left the tour and came home. And the middle one, most tragic case of all, Terry Newton. He was a rugby league player, played for Bradford Bulls amongst others, that he got found guilty for taking banned substances, and it all got too much for him. He'd lost his income from the sport, felt he'd let everybody down, and tragically it led to him taking his own life. So it is important that we recognise the role that stress can play in sport. So what is stress? In terms of definition then, we say that it's a negative response of the body to a threat causing anxiety. So you can see that anxiety and stress are related together. So if we are going to be successful in sport, it is important that we're able to control our stress levels. So if we are stressed, again, some of the similarities we find with symptoms of anxiety is that we will feel apprehension, and that will manifest itself in terms of anxiety. And it's caused by the feeling that the performer just can't cope with the situation. So they look at the demands of the situation and feel that they haven't got the ability to meet those particular demands. So they feel out of control. And someone who is suffering from stress is likely to suffer from both cognitive and somatic anxiety. Is good for us, and the stress that we need to actually improve our performance is something called eustress. Yeah. So this is when the response to the threat of a challenge is overcome. And some athletes seek this out in particular things like adventurous sports. So if you think about just maybe going on a really high roller coaster, maybe the big one at Blackpool, the adrenaline kicks in, our arousal levels increase, and it's because of that kind of threat or risk that it actually helps us to actually enjoy that situation. And the same can be said in sport. So eustress could be caused by playing against a really good opposition in an important event, where we've got other teammates coming in who we think may be rivaling us for our position. So some stress is good for our performance. The key is how the person actually responds to it. Some people will respond to that in a positive way, the challenge, whereas others it could cause too much anxiety and therefore impact negatively on their performance. So what can cause ourselves stressors? So you should be able to think of stressors yourself, what might cause you stress. And it is important when we look at psychology, every topic we look at, try and apply everything to yourself. When you're playing sport, maybe watching it or coaching it, you'll find that you're able to better understand all of the topics by applying it to yourself and thinking of your own examples. So with stress, what stresses one person might actually cause eustress for another one. So we are all individual here. But some common stressors could be these. Injury. So that could be fear of injury. So if we get coming up against an opponent in a contact sport who could be physically forbidden, okay, so that could definitely help us, injure us. It could also be that when we've been injured in the past and we're worried about injuries reoccurring. The importance of the event, so maybe cup finals, Olympic finals, so where there's a lot at stake, that might cause too much stress for a particular performer. Similarly, playing against really good opponents that we might just think that we haven't got the demands to meet that situation, like we said with the definition. Or it could actually be the rewards which are available. So if they're high level, so this could be financial, it could be the chance to maybe move to a higher level team, gain sponsors. All of these may manifest itself in terms of stressing ourselves. And also fear of failure. And this is a key one, particularly when we're getting towards professional sport, where some people, as the term goes, choke when it gets to an important occasion. And instead of being free and playing their normal game, then they start to maybe try and play more conservatively, too safe. And usually what we find in sport, you have to be able to take risks to be able to improve your performance and be successful. So it's how the performer actually perceives these, okay, which will depend whether they can overcome that threat. So like we said previously, all of those stresses listed here, someone else might find them that they cause them eustress and actually improve their performance. And when we stress, it has an effect on our what we call attentional control and cue utilization. So for example, can we use selective attention correctly and shut out all of those irrelevant cues like noise from the crowd? Are we able to pick up who's the person in the best position to pass to? So that would come under cue utilization. So when we are stressed, then what we might do is focus on incorrect stimuli, not looking at who is in the best position to pass to, where the most important defenders are to us. So it could cause us to lose concentration and focus. We might become distracted by irrelevance, like the noises from the crowd. And our ability to take in information reduces. So we get what's called attentional narrowing that we mentioned previously. So particularly if we're playing open skill sports where we need a wide perceptual field, then this can definitely have a negative effect on our performance. So it links to our arousal levels. So when we looked at arousal in the first week, we're trying to get to that optimal level where we'll use cue utilization to its best. So if we've got low level of arousal, we've got a broad attentional field. So we're probably picking up all information which is not even that important to us. What we're after is that moderate level where our arousal level will be more at its optimal. So that way then we can shut out irrelevant cues and then focus on what's really important. And if we become over aroused, then we get that narrow attentional field. We're unable to have a wide perceptual view. We're unable to pick out the relevant cues from the environment. Nefer identified different styles of attention. So we looked at broad, so this is where there's a number of cues can be identified, so particularly important in open skilled sports like netball, rugby, football, etc. Narrow, when it's best to focus on one or two cues. Okay, so this is where we need a narrow attentional field. So an example could be golf, for example, just shutting out everything else except for what they need to do in terms of striking the ball. External, when information is drawn from the environment. So this definitely links with broad. So this is where we'll have to look at things like position on the pitch, where court markings are, where defenders are, opponents. And then internal, so this is the information we receive from our proprioceptors. So like that kinesthesis sense. So particularly important in activities such as gymnastics, trampolining. So this will tell us about the contraction of our muscles, how something feels. So as I mentioned before, broad and external tend to go together. So example here, position of players in a game. A broad internal, so that's looking at that psychological analysis of different cues. So it could be tactics or a game plan. A narrow external, then we're looking on one particular cue. So example here is that golfer concentrating on the putt. So all they're trying to focus on is maybe reading the undulations of the green, what speed to put on, what angle. And then the narrow internal. So this could be mental practice of one important cues. So this is going over it before we actually take part in that particular competition. So we see ourselves doing how we want to perform it. So an example here could be motor racing driver, maybe sat in the pits and is just visualizing the position they needs to put the car into before different bends, corners on the circuit. So what we're trying to achieve is get the correct style at the right time. If we do that, then we're going to lower our stress levels and performance is going to be enhanced. So techniques. After you've watched the video and we've had a little look at these, what I want you to do on the thing link, there'll be lots of different videos to go through and give you some practical examples of these different techniques. So we split them into both cognitive and somatic. So cognitive techniques deal with the psychological aspects of stress. So thought stopping is where we would use a particular trigger to try and remove irrational thoughts. So it could be get hold of yourself, okay, be positive, be confident, you can do this. That links in a little bit with positive self-talk. So rather than just maybe one key word, here then we're trying to replace those negative thoughts with positive ones. So examples where you see this is the player talking to themselves. Andy Murray was quite good at this. In between points you could see him just telling himself to control, to focus on what he was going to do next. Imagery, this is where we try to recreate that image of a previous successful performance. So there's different ways we could do it. We could just do it imagining in our heads ourselves. It could be looking at pictures or videos of past performances. So some teams maybe put up images of players when they've been successful and doing something really well, just to give them that help in visualizing what to do. So visualization does link in with imagery, okay, but this is the mental image of the skill. Okay, so the positive with this is that when we have to actually perform that action, we can do it quickly. So as I mentioned before, with something like motor racing, where the driver is sat maybe in the car, they haven't started yet, and you'll probably be able to see the head moving from side to side. So you can see that they're actually visualizing the position and replaying that circuit in the head. And hopefully then that will help them to be quicker when it actually comes to the race itself. Mental rehearsal, that's going over the movements of the task. So looking about what position does my body need to be into before I actually make that particular pass, if it was netball, or a golfer thinking about how far the backswing should be. Attentional control and cue utilization. So this is what we mentioned previously, it's about the correct attentional style. So is it broad and narrow, broad, external, etc. And psychological skill strain just relates to a lot of the techniques that we've looked at previously. Now it is key to with these that we actually practice them over and over again. So if we were to improve our physiological conditioning, let's say improving our speed over a certain distance, or our VO2 max, we would have to do lots of training over a period of time. And that's the same for psychological training. If these techniques are going to help the performer, they have to practice them maybe daily, 5 or 10 minutes a day, otherwise they just won't work. And that's where some people who doubt psychology don't think about how to actually implement a psychological training program. It's got to be similar to a physical one. And we have three major somatic techniques. So these deal with the physiological symptoms like the increase in heart rate, muscular tension. So the first one we have is biofeedback. So this is where we'll have galvanic skin responses. So we have electrodes connected to the body, and it's helping the person to recognize when we're feeling stressed and how to try and alleviate that. Progressive muscular relaxation, PMR, that's what you're going to practice on one of the thing links. So this can be good to try and get us to relax, okay, particularly going through a set sequence of tensing and relaxing different muscles. And centering, this is a form of breathing control. So this is quite good because it doesn't take as much time as progressive muscular relaxation. So we might be able to do this just quickly, maybe a pause in play or just perform an important technique. So a video you'll be able to see on the thing link is Johnny Wilkinson who was a kicker in rugby union, and you can see himself going through a preset routine, or where he's trying to relax and trying to control his breathing and slow his heart rate down before he performs his technique.